This video will provide a walkthrough of the whole class data analysis process to be able to visualize the data. So we start off with our whole class. As we can see, we have a total of 21 students, and the assessment is essentially 10 questions with 5 questions assessing Learning Goal 1 and 5 questions assessing Learning Goal 2. And as you can see, we have a pre-assessment as well as a post-assessment. And as you know, we have broken down our data into the number of questions correct for Learning Goal 1 and number of questions correct for Learning Goal 2. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and visualize our data, and we're going to start off by creating a chart that illustrates the pre and the difference between the pre and the post assessment for Learning Goal 1 for our class. So we're just going to go ahead and select our students. So at this point, select your students, go ahead and click on Command. And while you're holding Command, go ahead and select your pre-assessment scores as well as your post-assessment scores for Learning Goal 1. At this point, you're going to go ahead and go to File. You're going to go, to Insert, Chart. And as you can see here, it will provide us a column chart. Now, sometimes it will provide you something different, like a stacked column chart. In this case, maybe the better way to visualize the data will be looking at these side by side. So this would be, so our next step is going to be to create a title. So we're going to do that by clicking on Customize, Chart and Axis Title. So here we are looking at Learning Goal 1. So we can say whole class data pre and post assessment data comparison for Learning Goal 1. And we have that here. You can go ahead and customize that. The next thing we have would be our legend. Let's move that to the bottom. You can move it wherever you'd like. Now the blue will indicate our pre-assessment score. And our red is our post-assessment. So double click. Perfect. Okay, so now we want to make sure that we have titles for both axes. So let's go ahead and go to our horizontal axis title, which would be right here. And these would be our students. Now we will go to our vertical axis title, and that will be our score. Sometimes, if you'll notice that whenever you develop charts, the maximum and the minimum will not be accurate. So in this case, our highest score was 100. So this accurately reflects the highest score, which would be 100. Now, please note that sometimes you'll have a maxima of 80. So that would not accurately depict the data, right? So, in that case, you would just want to ensure that your maxima is 100, but that's not the case here. So we are just going to leave that as such. Okay, so wonderful. So now we have the data visualization for Learning Goal 1. We're going to be repeating the same exact process for Learning Goal 2. So again, go ahead and select your students, hold Command. Holding Command, go ahead and select your percent for pre, percent for post, and go ahead and click on Insert, Chart. Same concept. In this case, as you can see, we don't want a stacked column chart. We would just like a column chart. And we're going to go ahead and click on Customize your chart title. We're going to, and this is for Learning Goal 2. You can go ahead and center that there. As far as our legend, we can position that at the bottom or to the side, wherever you would like. Remember that this is our pre-assessment, and red is our post-assessment. And we can see that here. Remember that you also want to name your axis title. So on the bottom we have students, and for our vertical we have our score. Now, another thing that you can do is you can insert your data labels, but here it's not very appropriate. We can see that it would look a little busy, so we can leave that as such. So as you can see here, we have our data visualization for Learning Goal 1 and for Learning Goal 2. Now, Here, of course, these are nice in the sense that they provide somewhat of a visual, but in terms of the growth from pre to post assessment, we wouldn't necessarily be able to see that. So we are going to be creating a visual for the growth for each of these goals. So if we click here, we're going to have to engage our use of formulas on Google Sheets. So we're going to be creating a new data set, if you will. So we're going to click on Students, and we're going to go ahead and select our students, and we're going to paste them over. And we're going to be creating a chart, and this new data label will be called LG1 Growth, and this one will be LG2 Growth. So as you can see, we can go ahead and then select, we want to go ahead and find out the growth for LG1 from pre to post assessment. So if we wanted to do that mathematically, that would simply be taking our score for our post assessment and subtracting our score for our pre-assessment. So that can be easily done using a formula. So we're going to click on equals, select this, minus this score, click enter. And a nice thing about Google Sheets is that if you click this here, and if you drag it down, it will automatically fill in the rest of them for you. So that's quite nice. Then we're going to go and do the same exact thing for Learning Goal 2. So equals, that will be our post-assessment score minus our pre-assessment score, equals. And then same concept, we're going to drag this down here, enter. Now we can also look at the average for each of these. So if you wanted to talk about the average growth in your particular data set, you can definitely say that. So for Learning Goal 1, our average growth, so you're going to say equals average. Our average would be this, enter, and same concept here. And a trick that you can also do here is, because this is a special instance where we have our data side by side, you can go ahead and bring this formula over here, and it does it for you. So if you're talking about this in your narrative, you can say that your average would be an average growth of 42 points from pre to post assessment for LG1, and an average growth of 38 points from pre to post assessment for LG2. And remember that you can always find the average for these as well by simply using the average formula for each of these. For example, you would write average, as you've seen in previous videos, enter, and then you can do the same exact for each. Now remember, the total score would be represented here, right? And remember that the total score is broken down into percentages for questions assessing Learning Goal 1 and for questions that are assessing Learning Goal 2. Wonderful. So at this point, now that we have an understanding of the growth for LG1 and LG2, we can go ahead and then graph indicating the growth for LG1 and the growth for LG2 for each particular student. So to do that, we are going to follow the same process. So we're going to select your students, clicking Command, and while you're holding onto Command, go ahead and select the next data. And then at this point, you'll click on Insert Chart, and we can see that here. So the program is kind of labeling these already for us. Now we want to look at these closely, right? Because if you recall, when we were looking at this chart, blue and red indicated pre-assessment and red indicated a post-assessment. Now in this case, we need to look at these carefully, because now these will not be pre-assessment nor post-assessment, but rather the blue will be our LG1. But really, LG1 what, right? So LG1 growth, point growth specifically. For blue is LG1 and red is LG2. So double click. And another thing is that if you want to try to keep everything uniform, right, And let's move the legend back here to the bottom. And then of course we want to label this, so we have our students here as well. And now in this case we will have our point growth. That will be our vertical title. So let's go to our vertical title, and that would be point growth from pre to post assessment. Or we can just say point growth. We can talk about that in the title. And now in terms of the title, we can go ahead and change that. So we can say whole class growth from pre to post assessment for LG1 and LG2. And you can go ahead and center this as well here. So we have our chart, and then of course we see LG1 and LG2, right? You can go ahead and hover over these, right? So we have that information. Now, if you also wanted to graph, the comparison or the average comparison for LG1 and LG2, you could definitely do that by selecting these. And inserting a column, right? So you can also do that there as well. So we have this here, right, in terms of our whole class growth. So we have our chart, and that shows the whole class growth from pre to post assessment for LG1 and LG2. So again, this is going to be illustrating our whole class growth. Now, in this particular situation, right, we already have our information here. And at this point, you're going to then move on towards analyzing your data for the subgroups, and then ultimately you're going to be selecting 3 to 5 individual students that you are going to be comparing. So if we look at this, at this point we have already developed our chart, our growth for each particular group, right? So in this case, of course, you're going to go ahead and bring over your students, right, for each particular group. So we have gifted and talented students, that would be students 16 and 18. So we're going to go ahead and go to student 16, go ahead and select that, and then clicking command. We know our second student would be student 18, and then we're going to go ahead and copy and then bring these students over here, paste, and we see them here, right? Of course, you can also find your average, but importantly, we had already determined the point of growth for these particular students, and we found, so we're going to go ahead and bring this information over here. And let's go ahead and write this in here. And now going back here, we know that we have students 16 and 18. So 16 and 18, clicking command, and then go back here, and then paste. Oh, did I copy? Okay, 1 second. So copy. Paste. Okay, it's copying the formula. So here we're going to go edit, paste special, just the values, as you can see that here. And we're going to go ahead and repeat the same exact process that we looked at right here, right? So we have our how the students did, right? And in this case, we can also graph the growth. So starting off here, again, selecting the 2 students, select your pre, select your post, insert chart. We see this here, so we have students 16 and 18. Remember, blue will be your pre-assessment, while red will be your post-assessment. Great, so we want to go ahead and again move this to the bottom, and we can go ahead and write our chart title. So they will be very similar as you can see here, right, the only difference is that now, instead of looking at the whole class, what are we looking at? Well, we're looking at our gifted and talented students. So, okay, so this is going to be for learning goal 1. Oh no, okay, sorry about that. And this is no longer the whole class. This will be our GT students. For learning goal 1. And same concept here, we also want to ensure that our titles are labeled appropriately, just like in the previous example. So our maxima and minimum look good. Let's go ahead and move this over here. And we're going to repeat the same process for learning goal 2. So again, select your students, clicking on command, hold on to command, and then go to insert chart. Same concept here. So we're going to click on customize. Let's customize our chart titles. Now again, in this case, this is gifted and talented, but this is for learning goal 2. Remember, your learning goal 1 should be your lower level Bloom's taxonomy, while your learning goal 2 will be your higher level Bloom's taxonomy. So just a gentle reminder on that. And then here, of course, we have our pre-assessment. And then here we have our post assessment. And then at this point, we're going to go ahead and ensure that, again, all of our titles are labeled appropriately. So looking at our vertical title, and that would be our score. Okay, fantastic. Now here, remember, let's move this over here to the bottom, or wherever you like, right, wherever you want to move it. So remember here, you can go ahead and label this. So this would be a situation like, where you can visualize and have the data label. So compared to the previous examples where you had so many numbers and it just kind of didn't look quite very nice there. So we can do the same thing here. This would be a situation where it wouldn't be too busy of a chart. So let's go here to our series and have our data labels, and we can see that there. And when you are writing your analysis, you can actually see them, and that can definitely help you. And then finally, the last chart that we can develop here would be the one that is indicating the growth. And we can go ahead and kind of keep the same structure for this, for the charts. So let's go back here to our gifted and talented and develop our growth chart. So clicking command, select these, and then insert chart. Very similar. Now remember that in this case, blue will be LG1, while red will be LG2, your lower level learning goal and your higher level learning goal. Let's go back to our customization, customizing our title. Again, here you can kind of keep the same structure that you have for your title. In this case, we are looking at the growth. However, specifically, this will be the growth for, this would be, well, for our GT students, right? So gifted and talented. And then we can, of course, center this. We can move this here to the bottom. And then remember, we want to ensure that our these are labeled appropriately. And we want to this. So this would be our point to growth. And if you go to series, you can show the numbers for your data label. So there we have it. We have our charts for each one. And then you would be repeating the same exact process with the EBELL, SPED, 504, as well as your individual students.